It's your first day at the job, or maybe your last. Your father got taken by enemy soldiers because he made swords better than anyone else, and now you have to fill his boots. Problem is, you don't even know how to hold the hammer properly, but there's a war coming, and you need to make at least 70 new swords. The timeline? Could be 1 hour, could be a week. Nobody really knows because the enemy is already preparing for battle. The king gave you 3 helpers, but here's the catch. They all had to pay bribes just to get hired. That's medieval hiring for you. This is why the kingdom has had 11 different kings in 1 week. Politics, right? So here you are, completely on your own. You need to learn everything from scratch, and there's no instruction manual. No YouTube tutorials called sword making for dummies. The only way to learn is by burning your fingers and hoping for the best. You start examining the tools scattered around the forge. There are scissors, different types of hammers, some already sharpened blades, a swage, fuller, drift, hardy, and about 50 other tools that seem to have absolutely nothing to do with making a sword. It's like trying to cook a meal with a toolbox. Your first helper shows up 3 hours late, claiming he got lost. Lost? The forge has been in the same spot for 20 years and there's literally smoke coming out of it. Your second helper arrives drunk, and the third one, well, he's apparently the village idiot's cousin, which explains why he keeps trying to use the hammer as a spoon. You grab a piece of metal and place it in the fire. The heat hits your face like a dragon's breath, and you realize nobody mentioned that blacksmithing involves slowly cooking yourself while you work. Sweat starts pouring down your face within minutes. This is going to be a long day. The first sword attempt? Complete disaster. You heated the metal too much and it became as soft as butter. The second attempt, you didn't heat it enough and the metal cracked like an egg. Helper number 2 suggests adding more coal to the fire, which nearly burns down half the workshop. By noon you've managed to create something that vaguely resembles a sword if you squint really hard and use your imagination. It's crooked, the edge is duller than a conversation with your neighbor, and it weighs about as much as a small horse. But hey, it's sword-shaped. The village messenger arrives with news that makes your stomach drop. The enemy has captured another nearby town, and they're moving faster than expected. Your deadline just got shorter, way shorter. You look at your pathetic excuse for a sword, then at the pile of raw metal that needs to become 69 more weapons of war. Your helpers are now arguing about whose turn it is to work the bellows, and one of them just accidentally dropped a red-hot piece of iron on his foot. This is when you start questioning every life choice that led you to this moment. Your father made this look easy. He could forge a perfect blade in half a day while humming folk songs. You can barely make a metal stick without setting something on fire. The afternoon brings new challenges. A royal inspector shows up to check your progress. He takes one look at your first sword, picks it up, and it literally bends in half under its own weight. His expression says everything you need to know about your future employment prospects. How many have you completed? He asks, trying to straighten your bent sword. Well, technically 1, you reply, watching him struggle with your masterpiece of metallurgy. He stares at you with the kind of look reserved for people who've just announced they plan to fight a dragon with a wooden spoon. Then he leaves without another word, probably to update his will. The next morning brings even worse news. The royal messenger returns, this time with an official scroll. Your deadline has been moved up again. Apparently the enemy decided to attack earlier than expected because they heard about your sword-making progress, or lack thereof. You've now got exactly 3 days to complete all 70 swords. That's roughly 23 swords per day. Your math skills tell you this is impossible, but medieval logic doesn't care about your math skills. Your helpers decide this is the perfect time to demand higher wages. Helper number 1 claims his back hurts from watching you work. Helper number 2 says the smoke is bad for his complexion. The third helper, well, he's been using your finest steel to make decorative spoons for his wife. You spend the entire second day trying to perfect your technique. Every sword comes out looking like it was made by someone wearing mittens, while blindfolded. Some are too short, others are too long, and one somehow ended up shaped like a question mark. By evening, you've managed to create 12 weapons that could generously be called sword-adjacent. The pile of rejected attempts grows larger by the hour. Your workshop now looks like a graveyard for murdered metal. The third day arrives with the sound of war horns in the distance. The enemy is close enough that you can see their campfires from your window. Your stomach feels like it's hosting its own little war. You work through the night, your hands blistered and your eyes burning from smoke. The helpers have long gone home, claiming they need their beauty sleep. Beauty sleep, while you're here trying to prevent a massacre with your questionable metalwork. Dawn breaks, and you've somehow managed to complete 70 sword-shaped objects. They're not pretty, they're not sharp, and half of them look like they were designed by someone who had never seen a sword before. But they exist. The soldiers arrive to collect the weapons. You watch nervously as they examine your work. Their faces show the kind of confusion usually reserved for people trying to solve complex puzzles while underwater. These are interesting, the captain says, holding up a sword that curves in 3 different directions. Within hours the battle begins. You watch from your workshop window as your swords go into combat. What happens next makes you wish you had chosen a different profession, like professional dragon wrestling. The first soldier swings your sword at an enemy shield. The blade bounces off like a rubber ball and flies backward, nearly taking out his own teammate. The second soldier's weapon snaps in half on the first contact, leaving him holding what amounts to an expensive metal stick. Your masterpieces are failing spectacularly across the battlefield. Soldiers are throwing your swords at enemies instead of swinging them, because apparently they work better as projectiles than actual weapons. The battle ends in complete disaster. Your kingdom loses not just the fight, but also an entire city, because half the soldiers were left weaponless after your swords broke on first contact. The king is furious. We're talking medieval level furious, which is like regular furious, but with more public executions and fewer anger management classes. 2 weeks later, another battle. Same story. Your replacement swords perform even worse than the first batch. This time they lose a castle. The soldiers return looking at you like you personally invited the enemy over for dinner. The third battle? Complete catastrophe. Your swords are so useless that some soldiers just threw them down and started fighting with rocks instead. Rocks? Apparently more reliable than your professional metalwork. The king has had enough. He orders his guards to prepare the execution platform. You're about to become a very crispy blacksmith, because apparently failure in medieval times comes with a burning clause in your employment contract. They tie you to the post, pile wood around your feet, and light the fire. The crowd gathers to watch your professional career end in the most literal way possible. This is definitely not how you imagined your performance review going. Just as the soldier raises his sword to cut the rope and drop you into the flames, he slips. Medieval occupational safety was basically non-existent, so naturally, someone trips on their own feet during your execution. The sword flies from his hands and slices clean through the castle's stone wall. Not just the surface, it cuts through 10 layers of solid stone like they're made of soft cheese. The entire crowd goes silent. Everyone stares at the sword embedded in the wall, then at the perfect cut it made through supposedly impenetrable stone. Turns out this sword was your actual masterpiece, the one you made by accident while panicking about your impending execution. Sometimes your best work happens when you're not overthinking it, or when you're terrified of being turned into human barbecue. The king's anger transforms into pure joy. He orders 1,000 more swords exactly like this one. Finally, a weapon that can actually cut through something other than the wielder's expectations. But here's the problem. You have absolutely no idea how you made that sword. You were so panicked and exhausted that you just grabbed random materials and started hammering. It was pure accident, and now everyone expects you to repeat your accidental genius. You spend the next week trying to recreate the process. Every attempt looks identical to the miracle sword, but when tested, they perform like your original disasters. You're basically trying to recreate lightning in a bottle, except the bottle is your forge and the lightning is your complete lack of consistent skill. Somehow, through sheer luck or divine intervention, you manage to produce exactly what's needed. You work day and night, producing over 1,000 perfect swords. Your hands are destroyed, your back is broken, and you're surviving on about 3 hours of sleep per night. But the weapons are flawless. You finally finish the massive order and collapse in your workshop, exhausted but proud. The next morning you wake up to the sound of celebration horns echoing across the kingdom. You rush outside, expecting to see preparations for the great battle that your swords will surely win. Instead you see both kings, hugging each other like long-lost brothers. Peace treaty, signed yesterday. No more war. All those perfect swords you nearly died making, completely unnecessary. The kingdoms decided to become allies instead of fighting, which is wonderful for international relations, but terrible for your mental health. And this is why it's actually sucked to be a blacksmith.